Hi, everyone. This is Christopher Casey, the Director of Voter Engagement here at We Act for Environmental Justice. And this is our 5th video in our video series about how you can participate effectively in this year's 2020 election. So let's go ahead and get started. The topic of this video is going to be about essentially voting by mail. So let's get started with this video. This video is going to be a bit longer than the other ones that we've done, but hopefully you'll find it useful. So, voting by mail. I'm going to mention this key site, www.weact.org/vote or weact.org/vote a lot, sort of the WeAct site. I'm going to say that a lot in this video, so just keep that in mind. And of course, here's the actual address. All right, so voting 101. There are only 3 ways to vote. The first is you can vote by mail. The second is you can vote on Election Day on November 3rd, and then the third is that you can vote early. Today, we're going to talk only about voting by mail. All right, so voting by mail is just simply you get to vote by mail, and it's voting in absentee is sort of the technical term, but that's all that it is. It's the same old voting, but you just aren't going in a booth. Okay. There are essentially sort of 4 benefits. Actually, there are many benefits, but there are 4 major benefits to voting by mail. The first is you get to avoid lines. You don't ever have to worry about long lines wherever you are. The second is that convenience. It is convenient to just be able to send something in the mail and have your vote counted. The third is it does help our poll workers, and as we know, there is a poll worker shortage because of COVID. And then the fourth is that it does actually help yourself because of COVID. I know many of you are concerned about being in long lines with lots of people or being in a building to cast your ballot. Voting by mail allows you to do that safely and securely. Now, there have been a lot of myths about voting by mail, and to be honest, a lot of falsehoods about voting by mail. And so I just want to go through some things that I think you should know about voting by mail. The first is, again, it's just voting by mail versus in a booth. That's all it is. The second is that there are 3 states that only vote by mail. There are no booths, there are no lines, there are none of that. They all have, and for years, voted by mail, and those states are both states that are mostly Democrat in terms of who wins and mostly Republican, okay? The third is that all Americans who are abroad, and there are a little over 3 to 4 million of them, including our troops, our diplomatic service, all of those folks vote by mail and have for years. The other thing to know is that this started during the Civil War. So like when we were literally at war with one another as a country is when this started. And then the fourth is that in the last major election that we had as a country in 2018, nearly 40 million Americans voted by mail. So now we're going to get into the part that's going to be a bit long, all right? But I want to talk about how to vote by mail. And first, here are some just prerequisites before we get into actually how you do it, and where I'm going to actually show you a ballot and a security envelope and sort of all the things you need to do to vote by mail so that your vote is counted. So first, you do want to check if you're registered to vote, okay? You cannot apply for an absentee ballot if you're not on the roll. So you want to check, and you can go to our weact.org our WeAct site to check for yourself. The second is that here in New York, you need a reason. And in fact, in most states, you need a reason, an excuse to vote by mail. Here in New York and in many states, COVID, so concerns around COVID, is a valid excuse, okay? The third is that you must apply. You can't just get a ballot. You actually have to apply, and you can apply online. Again, our weact.org, our vote site, that actually does have the link for which you can actually apply to have a ballot mailed to you to fill out. Then you need to fill out the ballot correctly, and we're going to go over that very, very explicitly on this video. And then, and this is key, you must mail in your ballot or drop it off by November 3rd here in New York in order for it to be counted. okay? So you have to mail it in and have it postmarked by November 3rd, or drop it in to one of the election offices in your borough. So if you're here in New York, each of the boroughs has an election office. And again, go to our site, our vote site, to see it or to find your own. You can drop it off there, or you can drop it off at one of your early voting polling locations. So not the polling location that you normally vote in on November 3rd, if you were to do that, but an early voting location. Those are 3 different ways you can do that. But the key thing is that November 3rd is the deadline. Okay. Now we are suggesting to all of our supporters and our members that if you've received your ballot already and you've yet to fill it out, to fill it out and to mail it or drop it in by October 26th, if you can. Okay. The reason we're saying this is, as we all know, the Postal Service has been slowed down, and we want to make sure that your ballot gets in time, so November 3rd, for it to count. So these are some prerequisites. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to show you an example absentee ballot about how to fill it out and mail it in correctly. So your absentee ballot, when it comes to you in the mail, will come to you in something that looks like this. In fact, exactly like this. It'll say official absentee ballot. It'll have your name and your address. It'll say the Board of Elections for your particular borough if you're here in New York, okay? And so this is what will have your ballot and other key items. And there are 3 key items that should be in this ballot, okay? The very first is the ballot itself, so where you will check the candidates that you want to vote for. The second is it will have what is called a security envelope. And then the third is what will be a return envelope. So these are the 3 components that will come in the mail in this package, okay? Here is one of those components. Remember, there are 3. This is the ballot itself. I'm going to try to make this a little bigger so that everyone can see it. All right, so here is the ballot, and here are the candidates for the 2020 election. Here are the congressional candidates, the state candidates for state senate, for assembly. And as I didn't say this earlier, but there are 2 sides to this ballot. So you definitely want to look at both sides and check off all the different candidates that are running in your particular area. But this is the first component, the actual ballot itself, of which it has 2 sides, and that you must fill out, okay? The second component that you will see is the actual absentee security ballot, okay? And it will look like this. On the side off to the left, I believe, you will see your name and a barcode. That barcode is very critical because this is how they will check that there's no fraudulent activity occurring, okay? This security envelope has, like all envelopes, 2 sides. It has this front side, and then it has this back side, okay? The back side, folks, is super, super critical, okay? So all you need to do once you filled out your ballot is you need to, where you see this big X, sign it and date it, okay? You'll see also here, this is sort of the statement of absentee voter. This is sort of you legally saying to the public and to the law, to the authorities, that you are the person filling this out, okay? Now, there are cases in which you might be doing this for another person, say someone who is sick and shut in, or they're illiterate, okay? If indeed you are going to help that person, this is where you would, as a witness, sign that you helped another person. So this, you wouldn't sign this part here, but for whoever you're doing this for and you're helping them with their ballot, you would sign it here. But if this is your ballot, the back side of the security envelope must be signed and it must be dated. If these 2 things don't happen, then this ballot will not be counted. I want to be really clear about that. In other states, so if you're viewing this from another state, there are other things that you must do. For example, you may have to, particularly in states in the South, you may have to get a witness to also sign your security envelope. You may have to get it notarized. There are just many things that you may have to do. But here in New York, you absolutely need to sign this and you absolutely need to date it. All right, that is the second component. So the first was the ballot. The second is the security envelope. The third is the return envelope. And this is what it looks like. Again, at the top left, you'll see your name. And again, you'll see that barcode for security. It'll say the return envelope. It will say the address of where your election board is in the particular borough that you're in New York, okay? So here's what would happen at this point. You would fill out the ballot. You will place the ballot in the security envelope. You will turn the security envelope over if you are going to be voting and not witnessing for someone else. At the red X, you will sign your name and you will date it. You will put the ballot into that security envelope, and then you will put the security envelope into this return envelope. And then here is the key thing about the return envelope. You will want to put not one, but 2 stamps on this envelope if you're going to mail it in. Again, you can drop it in at an early voting location, at the postal service, at your local postal office. You can drop it in, okay? But if you're going to mail it, we highly suggest, as does here in New York, the Attorney General of New York, that you put 2 stamps. And the reason for that is there are some voters here in New York whose ballots are going to have way more candidates and thus will be longer in terms of the paper and thus heavier, okay? And then other voters. And so because of the differences in the candidates that we have throughout New York State and throughout New York City, there's just the weights are going to be different. And so just to be on the safe side, we suggest, as does the Attorney General of New York, that you put 2 stamps on this ballot. So again, fill out the ballot, component 1 in the mailer you get, put it in the security envelope, which is component 2, put the security envelope in the return envelope, which is what you're looking at, and then you want to put these 2 stamps on and mail it in. Okay, that is how you properly fill out and mail in, if you're going to mail it in or drop it in, your absentee ballot. There is, I want to be clear, if you have any questions about any of this, again, go to our WeAct site where you can find some information. But I wanted to and sort of go over something very briefly with everyone, and that is, what if you don't receive your ballot in the mail? That's always possible, okay? Now, no problem. You can vote in person either during early voting or on election day. So if you don't get your ballot and you've applied for one and you just don't get it, you can always vote in person during early vote or on November 3rd itself on election day. All right. Please note that all poll workers in America, make sure that people do not vote twice. And I want to be clear, it is illegal for you to vote twice. I'm sure you're not going to do it, but I just wanted you to know that people at the polls will count these things to make sure that we have a good election of high integrity, okay? All right, so thank you all so much. This is Christopher Casey again, the Director of Voter Engagement here at WeAct Environmental Justice. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it useful. I hope you go out there also and vote for everything that you care about and bring people that you love to the polls or through the mail-in voting as well. Take care. Bye-bye.